Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Grace Lin, who is a children's book author. And I'm going to let her tell you about the books that she writes because she writes kind of a whole uh, range of books. So, Grace?
Sure. So I am Grace Lin, and I am an author and an illustrator. And I do this whole spiel when I talk to kids because I want them to know that I'm an author and an illustrator. So an author is somebody who writes the words to a book, an illustrator is the person who draws the pictures to a book, and that is why my name is the only name on the cover of the book because I'm both the author and the illustrator. And I'm an author and illustrator of all different kinds of children's books. I'm an author and illustrator of board books like this. So for really small babies, if anyone has babies in their family, I'm an author and illustrator of early readers like this. So for students who are just learning to read, I'm an author and illustrator of novels like these, so for independent reading. And I'm an author and illustrator of picture books like this, so books that are like meant to be shared. So it could be caregivers with their kids, or teachers with their students, or authors with their readers. So I'm an author and illustrator of all different kinds of books. So hopefully your viewers will find something of mine that they like.
And you're also an author of novels.
Yes, novels like this one and this one. So yeah, the ones that are mainly for independent reading. So like lots of words, as I like to tell the kids, lots and lots of words.
Okay. Um, so, what can your readers expect from your newest book or books?
Okay, so I have my newest books that most recently came out were the set of board books, and there's four of them. There's Up to My Knees, The Last Marshmallow, um, and I'm trying to grab them all for you here. Circle, Sphere, and What Will Fit. Hold on, let me see if I can grab that for you. Of course, I make things fall down. So these are my most recent board books, and these are obviously for babies, but they are what's unusual about these books is that they incorporate math concepts for kids, like in a very, very child-friendly way. Usually when you say math, people think it's numbers, but this is not numbers. It shows kids how math is around them every day. So it's kind of the idea of when you blow into a bubble, when you blow bubbles, it's a flat circle, but when you blow into it, it becomes a sphere. So it's like very simple ideas like that, but hopefully set the groundwork for loving math in the future. So these are my newest books. And I also have a novel. Let's see if I can grab it. As more books fall down. So I have my most recent novel is this one. It's Before the Sword. And this is actually an original prequel to the Disney Mulan movie.
Wow. And okay, and what was your inspiration for your well, why don't you choose which you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Well, do you have an idea of your viewership? Are they usually older or younger do you think
We
what
have
should
everything.
be? All right, so so I'll do the inspiration for Mulan. I think that'll be fun for kids
Yes,
to hear.
I think so.
So this book, actually, what happened was that Disney, because of the Mulan movie, they approached me and they said, "We're doing, obviously, hopefully that you've heard, we're doing this movie, live action version of Mulan, and we're looking for somebody to write an original prequel to the movie." And I said, and we'd like you to do it. And I was like, well, what do you mean by prequel? And what do you mean, like, what would I have to do? Did you want me just to like write a novel version of the movie? And they said, no, no, no. We want you to create your own story. So what happened was they sent me the script and they said, you can write whatever you want. that happens before the movie, as long as it doesn't contradict anything that happens in the movie. And that was a really exciting and fun kind of challenge for me. So basically, I got to write the backstory of a lot of these characters. If you have seen the movie Mulan, the live action version, you'll know that there's a witch character in that movie. And so it was very exciting for me because I got to write the backstory of that witch character. And if you read my book, so hopefully then you see the movie, all of a sudden things will make so much more sense. Like Mulan's sister is very scared of spiders in the book, and I'm sorry, very scared of spiders in the movie, and the book makes it so clear why she is. So so that was a really fun challenge that I was so glad that I got to take on.
Wow, that must have been incredible.
Yeah, it was super fun. And it was really neat because I got to read the script like way ahead of time, and I got to see pre-production or like images before the movie was out. So it was really exciting.
And what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books and movie?
To what draws them to the books and movie, well, to this one, I'm thinking and I'm hoping that it's the action and the excitement of it. Like I think that it's just such a thrilling story of Mulan, this girl warrior, and I think that what my book does, it kind of shows who she was before she became the hero, and like the seeds of what makes a hero, because you don't become a hero right away. Like there's a lot of things that make you into a hero, so that lead you up to that step. And so hopefully they read this book and then they can see that the journey to become a hero is not overnight. It's a journey.
Hmm. So, what kinds of research went into making this book?
So to make this book, it was so if you get a chance to read this book, you'll know that I interweave a lot of Chinese folk tales in here, or Chinese mythology. There is a character in this book that is one of the eight immortals, which is one of a very well-known group of, I guess, for lack of a better word, gods in Chinese culture. And so I did a lot of reading on folk tales and fairy tales, and which honestly I'm really well versed in to begin with, because I have these other books like Where the Mountain Meets the Moon and When the Sea Turns Silver and Star Over the Sky, which are also based on folk tales and mythology. So which is actually the reason why I'm pretty sure Disney came to me, because Mulan herself, the story of Mulan is a folk tale. So it made sense for them to come to me, who has written so many novels with folk tales interwoven in them.
Right, right. And what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to the finished book?
So this book is a little bit different than some of my other novels that I work on my own, because this one, because it was with the Disney studio, they wanted me to give them a very detailed outline. And so I
Right.
had to give them a very detailed outline, which actually worked really well. This is probably the fastest novel I ever wrote, because I had to make sure that everything was really detailed. And I couldn't really veer too much from the outline after I wrote it. And I think that it worked really well. It went really smoothly because of that. I think when I'm left to my own devices, I sometimes tend to meander to other places very often.
Okay. Getting back to the research, Mulan itself was a folk tale, was a regular folk tale.
Yeah.
The whole story was a folk tale. So,
Yes.
so that the research that went into the movie, it was all already written pretty much.
So this is the thing about folk tales, right? And one of the reasons why I love using them as part of my work is, folk tales change with every teller. I mean, that is just the nature of a folk tale. Like we have an oral tradition of folk tales, and so every time the storyteller would tell the story, it would change a little bit, and that's the same
Right.
thing with what we do now. So the idea of a folk tale is that it's ever changing, that it can grow and grow to suit the needs of the time. So Mulan was
Ah,
a folk tale. most people do not think she was a real person, but there were many female warriors at that time. And it was during a time when the many soldiers were feeling very demoralized about a certain war they were fighting. They were always fighting wars, but at that point they were feeling very demoralized. And so this story, or this, it was started as, I think it was song or a ballad. This song started, or this story of Mulan, this woman warrior, you know, who was willing to sacrifice everything, so to sacrifice, you know, so much to fight this battle, to take her father's place, was a real morale booster, and it was much beloved. And then that story kept growing and growing and growing. And so that's why now you see so many versions of it. Like the version of Mulan's there's been many versions. There's been versions where she kills herself at the end. There's versions where she happily gets married at the end. And so what's been really interesting is that Disney itself did 2 different versions of Mulan, you know, so
Yeah.
like we have the animation and then we have this version. And so sometimes I know when this new live action came out, people were a little bit, some people were upset that Disney was changing the story from the animation. And I just thought that was really, I thought that was a little ironic, because, you know, that's, like I said, the nature of the folktale. It's going to change for each generation. Like we can't have a static folktale, or else it doesn't live.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So, um, hmm. Um, so getting back to you, what is your favorite research story?
So my favorite research story, hmm, uh, let's see, my favorite research stories. Well, I think that for Mulan specifically, or any of my books.
Any of your books?
Oh, okay, so let's see, my favorite research story. I think that when I was writing Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, I was writing a scene where my character, Min Lee, so this is my book, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and it's all about this girl named Min Lee who's on this journey to try to find the old man of the moon. And I wrote this story, and I knew I wanted her to go to a mountain village. And so, and I kind of had the outline and like the basic ideas of it. And then I had the good fortune to actually go to mainland China, and I traveled to a mountain village that I based the scene that she was going on. But I went in January to China, and it was freezing cold. It was so cold. And I remember being so cold in that mountain village. And so when I went back to write that scene, I was like, oh, she has to be cold. She has to be really cold. And she has to, like, even though it's not winter in the scene. And then that actually, because she was so cold, and it made me think about having to wear another jacket, that actually inspired one of my favorite scenes in this book.
Oh,
Whereas Min Lee goes to the mountain village, and she's cold, and she spends some time there. And when she leaves, the villagers give her a coat to wear, because she's too cold. And she's grateful, and she says thank you. But as she waves goodbye, they all wave goodbye back to her. And as they all wave goodbye, she notices that each villager, their sleeve has a big gash of material missing from it. And then she looks at her coat, and she realizes her coat is made of all the different patches of everybody's missing piece of material from their sleeve. And so it was the research of being in China, being really cold, and then I've left out the other part, and then going to and learning about this tradition in Beijing called the 100 Wishes quilt, that when a baby is born, used to be like they would go around the village and everybody would donate a piece of material to make a quilt for the newly born baby. So it was like their wishes for this baby's life. And so it was mixing those two things, being really cold in the village, thinking about this 100 wishes quilt, making that scene where she has this coat made of 100 good wishes. So so that was a little convoluted, but that's probably one of the things that I like about the research. Is usually not a straight arrow, but how it kind of meshes together to make something in the story.
wow. It sounds like something that the reader should know about, definitely. When they're reading the book. That's a great story. Um, all right. So what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out the Beyond the Sword before, sorry, before the sword?
Um, oh, well, the biggest challenge is, well, it was a little sad because the book came out and then the pandemic happened right away.
Oh,
So it was a little sad because I was very excited for the book and we had this really lovely big launch, but then it was like 2 weeks later, the pandemic, everything shut down, and it was like so that was kind of demoralizing. But I'm still very proud of the book, and I still hope it finds readers. And then it was also really challenging afterwards with the Mulan movie. Was after the book came out, and then the Mulan movie, the actual movie that it was supposed to go with, was constantly postponed and postponed and postponed, and so that movie never came out until like maybe 8 months after the book came out. And so so there's a lot of things that didn't line up for that book. That was unfortunate. And then all these things about the actual movie that were problematic, and so it was those things were troubling and troubling and hard, but I still love my book and I hope readers do too.
I'm sure they will. Okay. Um, what character did you love or hate the most when writing the book?
So for Mulan Before the Sword, the character that I loved and hated, loved and hated the most, well, so I talked about that witch character in the movie, and so I wrote her backstory in my book. And in my book, she is the red fox because she constantly takes on the shape of a red fox. And I think there was and I loved writing her backstory, like, and trying to explain like what makes someone do the things that they do, like
Mhm.
it's her last line of the book is like, well, they called me a witch, so let me show them what a witch can do. So the idea being like so many different ideas, but one idea being you become what people label you sometimes.
Ah, that's great. So, so you loved and hated her.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's what I mean. I had a love-hate relationship with her because I felt bad for her, but she also made bad decisions.
Great. So, what else can we expect from you in the near future?
So I am working, unfortunately, I'm working very, very hard on 2 books right now, but because I am so slow, my next book does not come out. Oh, actually, I do have a couple other books that come out, but the book that I'm working on right now will not come out until winter 2023, I think.
Wow.
I'm working on a book called Once Upon a Book. It's a picture book. I can actually show you a little bit. Hold on. Sorry, let's see. So you can see there. These are the paintings. So it's about a girl that goes into a book and kind of like the adventure she goes on it. So you can see those are the illustrations I'm working on. But I'm quite a slow illustrator. And so that, like I said, even though you can see there's a lot of art that is already done, the book itself will not, it's still got much more to go, and it will not be out until winter 2023. And I'm also working on another novel, which, if all goes well, will come out maybe fall 2023. We'll see. We'll all cross our fingers. But that novel is about, so if you ever go to Chinatown, you'll know that they usually have like a Chinatown gate. And in front of the gate, there's usually 2 lions, 2 stone lions, 2 Chinese stone lions. And one lion holds a ball, and another lion actually holds a lion cub. And so the novel that I'm writing is about these stone lions as the main characters, specifically the
Wow.
lion cub. So I hope that is finished and done by fall 2023. 3 that for people to read.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting. Great. Yeah, you just brought up an interesting point. So you do your illustrations before you do the actual writing, or?
No, I do the writing. So especially for the book that I just showed you, I do the writing first and then I do the illustrations. But for picture books, I have to admit though, after I do the illustrations, I do tend to change the writing a lot,
That's what
like
I was
so,
wondering.
yeah. So like I always have a story and the approved story, but then after the illustrations, I do tend to edit it a bit afterwards. So but I do write first. I mean, I went to art school, and that's kind of how we were taught that you went to the writing and then the story. Though I do know lots of illustrators who work differently, like they'll do the illustrations and then write the story around it. But that's not how I work.
I know a lot of illustrators work actually have the story already written by somebody else, and then
Yes,
they do the illustration.
yeah, that happens most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really fabulous that you're able to do both.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
lucky. I feel very lucky that I've got that opportunity.
yeah, that's incredible. Okay, now I have some questions about you as a writer, and as an illustrator. What's your favorite part about being a writer illustrator on the whole writing and publishing process?
Let's see. I would say best part the best part, honestly, the best part is when when a reader says how much they love the book, or like, and they're like, I love this book. You're my favorite author. Like, I have to admit, like, I love knowing that my work has like touched someone. That really makes, I mean, that's for me, that's what it's all about, right? It's the idea that, yeah, I've created something and it has reached somebody and it has meant something to them. Like, that's such a important thing to me. But in terms of the process, I think I like getting the idea, and the thing about when you have the idea is like you can see that the book is going to be so beautiful. Like, it's like the idea, like, I got it, and it's going to be the most beautiful book ever. But then when you have to sit down and do it, and you're like, oh, it's not going to be that beautiful. And then it's kind of like you have to adjust your expectations. But that first initial spark is really, really fun, because you can the sky's the limit of how that book might turn out. And then I also really like finishing, because
Yeah.
you're like, and by then your expectations have been adjusted, and you're like, okay, and then it's just a feeling of accomplishment, like I finished it, I actually did it. So that's really good.
Okay, that's great. What do you consider the most challenging part of the process, and how do you overcome that?
For me, the most challenging part is always when I think that a lot of writers call it the slog, right? So there's kind of like I said, you have the idea, and then you start working on it, and you have to adjust your expectations, because you realize that it's never going to be as beautiful as you first initially imagined. And then you have to come to terms with the fact that you just have to make it the best you can make it. And of course, during that journey, there's lots of ups and downs, like, oh, it's gonna be okay, oh, it's gonna be terrible, and then there's certain parts, and this is what makes it so difficult, is that you're alone during all this part, like during this whole process. And there's always in every book, there's always a part where I hit, where I'm like, oh, nobody's like, this is gonna be terrible, nobody's gonna care, why am I working so hard, all these things. And it's that's probably the hardest thing, because I just told you, like, the thing that makes you the most happy is when somebody says that they love your book, right?
Mhm.
And what makes you the most unhappy is the idea that you might, like, I keep saying you, but but I shouldn't speak for other people. But what makes it so hard for me sometimes is that sometimes I feel like I will put in so much work and love, and something might mean so much to me, and then to put it out in the world and to realize that nobody cares is
Ah,
so heartbreaking. And that happens, and it will happen, it might happen, it will happen, it has happened. And and that is really probably the most difficult part, is realizing that in the process is like, yes, it might be that nobody cares about this except for me. and how do I get through that? I think if anybody is a creator, we've never become, we aren't creators obviously to make money, right? We're creators because there's something in us that needs to be expressed. So whenever I hit that like depths of despair, where I'm like, oh, the world doesn't care about this, the world doesn't care about my art, there's always like that little voice inside me that's like, well, even if the world doesn't need your art, you still need to make it. And that's the little flame that never extinguishes, that like has you to keep going. So, I mean, and that's not really a great pep talk, but that's the reality of the situation for me. I just realized that wasn't very inspiring.
I'm sure other people keep telling you, you've got to keep going.
But you just got to believe.
Okay. Now, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
My favorite adventure. I'm not sure. So I have done many things to make my writing better, which I think would fall under adventures. For example, I went so there's scenes where characters fly in my book. So like I remember I specifically went zip lining so that I could feel like, what does it feel like to fly? Like things like that. I've ridden on Chinese junk boats, and things like that to help give me ideas, like going to the village, like things like that. And those have been amazing adventures. But I think the one that stays in my mind is not an adventure that I actually went on physically. Is probably, so this is my book, When the Sea Turned to Silver. And this is kind of it's not really a sequel, but it's a sequel in a way of sorts to Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. And Where the Mountain Meets the Moon was it was a pretty popular book. And I remember I was going to schools and the kids would say, oh, I loved Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. Are you writing a sequel? And I said, well, I'm kind of writing a sequel. And they said, oh, is Min Lee going to be in it? Is Dragon going to be in it? And I said, oh, no, they're not, because this book, it takes place, like a generation later. So they're not really going to be in it. And they're like, and I remember I said this to a group, and there was one boy in the front who gave me this really angry look, and when I said, no, Min Lee's not going to be in it, and he went, but why not? And he was so angry at me. And then and it was all of a sudden, that journey for me was really eye-opening, because up to that point I said, oh no, they're not going to be into it. Not those characters won't be in it because it's too hard. It's a generation later. It's too hard. And when he said, but why not? It like opened up my eyes, and I was like, why not? This is a book. This is fiction. Like it can do anything you want. Like you can make it. I can make it if I wasn't being so lazy. And so that took me on a whole different journey with this book. And this book actually took me 6 years to write and illustrate, because like first 3 years I was going one way, and the other after that interaction, I went a whole other way. And I think the book became so much better and so strong, and I'm really proud of it. But like that was quite a journey.
Oh, I can imagine. Oh, wow. Yeah, so sometimes, the kids know what they want.
Yeah, but it was it was fascinating, because it was it really, like I said, it really opened my eyes to like, oh, why not? And I'm like, if my reason why not is because it's too hard, then that's not a very good reason. So that's just being lazy. I had to think about this. So
Great. What is the greatest lesson you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Oh, my greatest lesson. Um,
Excuse
I think the hardest lesson has been um, to be a writer. Excuse me, I should have got some water. To be a writer, you have to hold two things in your hands, or to be a creator of anything, you have to hold two things in your hand at the same time, and it's quite difficult. One is audacity, and that's the audacity to believe that you have something worthwhile to create that the world should see. Like, it takes a lot of courage, not like, audacity is really the best word for it, to believe that I have something that the world should see, like that is, in some ways, that's very you know narcissistic. I don't know. There's something very, when you put it in those terms, it seems a little bit selfish. I'm not quite sure what the only word that comes to my mind is audacious, right? So you have to have that, but that is also the only way things can be created. You have to have that, as hard as that sounds, like, you have to have that audacity in order to create things. But on the other hand, you have to have the humility, right? You have to have humility to know that you are the humility to know that what you write is not perfect, that you might have blind spots, that you are writing, that we are all creating blindly. So you might have blind spots that might offend people, might hurt people, might ignore people, and not give the intention, not express or have the impact of your intentions. And that is and to learn from that, and to realize um, and to realize that, and to accept the criticism, to accept all those things that you need to learn on this side. So it's kind of like humility and audacity, and putting those things together and to hold it at the same time is very, very difficult, and something that I'm still learning.
Wow. There's another kind of a word for audacity that I would like to use sometimes. It's a Yiddish word called chutzpah.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of means the same thing. Um, and okay, so what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers aside from that?
um, I think that with other writers, are you talking about kid writers, or like fellow
In
colleagues, or
general,
both? Oh, just in general. I mean, the best advice, this is the advice everybody gives, but it's valid, just read. Like, just read, and read as much as you can, and all different kinds of books as you can. I think that's how you're going to be. If you really want to write, then you have to read, and you can't just read. To be honest, you can't just read what you like. You have to read different things. You have to read things that you think you might not like. And if you don't like it after you're done reading, then good. Now you know what you don't want to write. But I think the idea is you have to broaden your reading as much as you can. And, there's a lot of, I guess the advice I would give is, if there's a book that I was going to say, there's some books that I think I'm not going to, that are usually not my normal reading genre, and so, but I know that I like, it's been so well recommended and all these things, and I'm like, so I was gonna say, if you can't bring yourself to listen to it on audiobook. And
good
at least,
idea.
so like, so that's been my trick for books that like are not like usually my cup of tea to read. I'll be like, oh, I know, I'll just listen to it on audiobook. And like that, even that is, even I don't think it's cheating, though some people might. but I do think even anything that broadens your mind, with literature, ingesting any kind of literature that broadens your mind is going to make you a better writer.
Is there anything special that you would suggest for children's writers?
In terms of reading?
No,
Um,
writing. In terms of writing,
oh,
any other piece of advice you'd like to share for children's book writers?
for children's book writers. for children's book writers and specifically, I mean, I think the same thing goes, is the reading. I think that specifically with children's writers, well, I don't know. I think it's the same.
Okay.
I think that one of the things I often talk to children's book authors about is about making sure that you are following your own moral compass, and I think that's really important. I mean, I think it's important for all writers, but specifically in children's books, because they're kids, and so if you're not writing from a good moral compass, then you can't really expect your writing to bring up kids with a good moral compass either. Not that your books have to have a message or anything like that. Like, it's not about didacticism, but it's just about, um, it's just about you yourself writing from a good moral compass. That was not, didn't come out right, but
Yeah, no, that's good.
hopefully people who watch get the idea.
Okay. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that have helped you in your career?
Um, uh, Early on, I was part of the SCBWI, which I think has a lot of really great things for aspiring and beginning authors. And for illustrators, I would look at the Society of Illustrators a lot. They have a great show, the Original Art Show, every year, and that's something that is always really inspirational.
Great. Okay. Now I have questions about you as a person.
Okay.
What is one thing that people don't realize about you?
I think they realize this, but maybe not. Like, I think some people don't realize how much of a dork I am. I
You
think
write
sometimes,
children's fantasy.
yeah, I think like that's pretty dorky, but I think most people realize it. But like once in a while, I think people think because I'm an author, I must be really cool. But I think when they see what I write and everything, I don't know. I think that there's sometimes there's a mystique with writers that they think like writers, they must be cool. Like, but no. So I think that's something.
Okay. What question do you wish interviewers would ask you, and what would your answer be?
Oh gosh, what would I want interviewers to ask me? And my favorite, I do get asked this quite often, but the reason, okay, so I often get asked, what would you be if you weren't an author and an illustrator? And I get this question quite often, and I usually say I would be a cake decorator. But most recently, I realized, no, I have come up with another alternative job that I would like to have. And that alternative job is that I would like to be the person who names the colors of paints for paint companies. You know how when you go into a like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, and you're going to pick out paint swatches, and you pick the swatches, and they all have these beautiful names like Moonlight or like Nighttime Shimmer, and I'm like, who gets to pick these names? Like, I would like to be the person that picks those names.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yes,
It
I
really
think that would be the
does.
best job.
Okay. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time to do those things?
Well, gosh, my passions. So much of my passions is my work. I mean, I think that's one of the joys of being an author and an illustrator, is that your passion is your work. But I do have these podcasts that I really love. I have a podcast called Kids Ask Authors, which is a podcast where a guest author and I answer one kid question a week. And every week it's always like a kid will ask, where do you get your ideas? And then me and Mo Willems will answer that question. So that is, I guess, one of my passions is podcasting. I think I've had 3 podcasts, and now I have 2 now, and I gave one up, but it shows that I must really like it because I keep doing them. And so I think podcasting, I think other passions. One passion that I've is doing things with my daughter. My daughter and I have so this thing called quackducks.com, where she has made a bunch of sculptures, little duck sculptures, and she sells them for to benefit her school PTA. Like, I think that I tend to have projects. I have a passion for projects. And some projects are very long lasting, like the quackducks.com or the podcasts. So that is probably what I do. And how do I find the time for them? I think you just make time for them. Sometimes it's hard, especially my daughter's quack ducks, but there's so much fun that you end up doing it when you can.
And you also have a YouTube channel, don't you?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. That YouTube channel was actually, I put it together. I started it during when the pandemic started, and so one of the things, one of the heartbreaking things about the pandemic is that it really revealed a lot of anti-Asian sentiment.
Yes.
And one of the things that was really bothering me was uh, that I felt like maybe a lot of kids were seeing people who looked like me and associating them as the enemy. And I really didn't want that to be the case. So I decided to do this series of YouTube videos, and they're not about race or anything like that. It was just like they're like me reading my books, little clips of me reading my books, me teaching kids how to draw a dog, me teaching kids how to draw a rabbit, me teaching kids how to draw a Chinese dragon, and always with little tidbits of Chinese culture in it and things like that. And mainly, I think kids get a big kick out of it, but mainly it was really my way of trying to put myself out there as much as possible, hoping that if I could reach kids and show them, hey, I just want to be your friend, hey, I just want to show you like this really fun book. I just want to show you that I am not your enemy, and people who look like me are not your enemy. That was really the thought process behind that. And because that was something I've always wanted to reach kids, which is why I do podcasts, but I realized during the pandemic, I think it's good to have a visual too, just to reinforce that idea that that, like I said, that Asians are not your enemy.
Yeah, that's very important. I agree. Okay, so what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you while you're writing or editing?
My writing space is really, really messy. There's lots of people, and I long to be one of them, who are very minimalist. They have like beautiful spaces, and unfortunately, my space is extremely messy. I just have a sofa and an ottoman, and I take my laptop and I sit there and I write, and I do the best I can. But so that's the space. I mean, this is my studio, so like that I just showed you. So like it's part of it, the part I just showed you when I was showing you the art. Like, so there's like the painting and drawing space, and then over there is the sofa that I sit on to write with my laptop. So what do I need to write? But I need to have lots of books around me. Usually to write, I have to have a lot of research books. So I have like piles and piles of like Chinese folk tales and Chinese culture and all these things when I'm writing my books. Yeah, so it's research books and a nice cozy place to sit.
Okay, and do you have to have any kind of drinks with you?
Oh yeah. That's good. Yes, that's very important. Extremely important.
Yes.
I'm not. I always drink tea. I always drink tea, and I eat a lot of candied ginger. That's my that is
Really?
my that is my Achilles heel. I'm not sure. But all of my books have been fueled by candied ginger, usually Trader Joe's.
Okay. And while you're writing, do you prefer music or silence?
Silence, yeah. Otherwise, I start thinking about the lyrics and I'll, and also, yeah, definitely silence.
Okay. And a lot of writers have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions that either help them or hinder them with their work. Do you have any of those?
I have 6 chickens, but they are not house chickens. They do not help me with my work, in at least not while I'm actually doing my work. But I think that they might inspire some future stories.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Um, and I only have two more hobbies, two more questions for you. Hobbies, yes. Chickens. Um, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And again, as every video, I give a little plug for Annie's.
Yay!
Yeah, that we can order any of your books that are available, of course. And you can call us at 508-796-5613 to order the books, or you can order any books if you email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. So where else could people get your books?
Well, I mean, you can always get my books at any independent bookstore. And if you don't have them, just ask them and I'm sure they will get them in. But you can find me online at gracelyn.com. And I'm on social media at Pacey Lynn on Instagram and on Twitter. So those are probably the best places to find me and see what I'm up to. Oh, and they could sign up for my newsletter. I have a newsletter that I send out 4 times a year. That's usually chock full of stuff like uh, activities and information like Lunar New Year. I did a huge newsletter where I told what the year of the ox brings to us and all those kinds of things. So I going to give a big plug to sign up for my newsletter.
Oh, great. And that was my second question. So you already answered it.
Oh, good.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope sometime. Where are you now? Where do you live
I'm in
now?
Western Massachusetts.
Oh, right.
Yes, and not too far away.
Yeah. So you'll definitely have to come and visit us.
Yes, definitely. Now that it's safe to for people to safer for people to get together, it's
Safer, yeah, definitely. And we will hopefully be starting to have some in store book signings. Hopefully, maybe towards the end of the year
yeah,
or
that'd be
something.
awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd love to have you. Okay. Well, thanks again, and we will be seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.